Good morning, members of the Board of Trustees, President Kelly, Dean Perlman, esteemed members of the faculty, administration, staff of the law school, beloved family, and fellow graduates, welcome. Congratulations to the class of 2020. What a great day to celebrate a year that has been primarily defined by immense loss. For some of us in the class of 2020, our law school experience started with the loss of our beloved Professor Wittenberg. And the beginnings of the global pandemic created even more losses, which ended extracurricular competitions, in-person classes, and law school as we knew it ended. This disruption continued throughout the bar exam, and I'm sure as we have all learned, that drinks over Zoom just aren't the same. Even today, our celebration is limited. Now, the class of 2020 sits in a fairly unique position in history, and our position is determined by our location in time and space. For some of us, for our location in time, the class of 2020 shares an odious inheritance with the classes of 1903, 1929, 1933, and 2009, of graduating within a recession or economic depression. We share the burden of the class of 1918 of graduating amidst a global pandemic. We share the distinction of the class of 1968 of graduating in a year defined by global protests for justice. The classes of 2020 and 2021 have had the great privilege of experiencing the calamities that defined previous classes synthesized into one great calamity. Now for our position in space. Today, the class of 2020 is in 4 Jersey Street, in a city filled with history. Today, we sit only 4 miles and 251 years away from an example of state violence against protesters which resulted in the murder of a young black man, inspiring calls for our revolution. We are only 2 miles away from a great reformer of this American experiment, Charles Sumner, and we're only 2 miles away from a great perfecter of this American experiment, a temporary resident of Boston, Martin Luther King Jr. Now, these markers aren't just a collection of interesting facts about Boston, but a reminder that as even brief residents of this city, we are connected to our city's history. The previous 2 years have featured awful flashbacks from our worst moments in our history, from police brutality to the storming of the Capitol, to a global pandemic which disproportionately affected our most marginalized. These 2 years have taught us that history is not passive, and historical sites aren't just a place of quiet contemplation or a nice place to take a picture, but that these sites are markers of a continued struggle, that the issues of the past aren't truly gone. We are only 5 miles away and 16 years away from when then Senator Biden instructed a different Suffolk class in a most solemn request that defines the struggle for the soul of our nation. He requested that we appeal to the better angels of our nature. There have been countless other speakers before who instructed various Suffolk law classes on the importance of maintaining our higher ideals. Let their words and mine not fall into a historical memory of a nice place to take a picture. Instead, take their words seriously. We have all been trained in a profession which emphasizes that, for the most part, words matter. They have impact. Speaking of being trained, I think it's important to think about where the class of 2020 started from. Here the class of 2020 sits 2.5 miles and almost 4 years past from where most of our law school journey began, where then Judge Georges of the Superior Court, now Judge Georges of the SJC, welcomed us to Suffolk Law and instructed us that our name must mean something. For 3, 4, and for some of us only 2 years, we spent trying to figure out what our name would mean. It has been noted by a previous student speaker that this journey of self-actualization was grounded by in steps in virtue. Another student speaker compared this journey of self-discovery through the steps of dealing with grief. Whether it's 7 stages or steps of virtue, we did not get through this process alone. Our primary guide during the journey was the faculty of Suffolk Law, who propelled us forward through their great instruction. Today, we are all recipients of the great alchemy of higher education that produces more than the sum of its parts. We also share a more specific transformation that modulated young, curious, and empathetic students to old, embattled litigators who disagree over the definition of the word is. We learned that if you want to know anything about rap, the best person to ask is an old white guy from Brooklyn. Now, that is my legally obligated rules against perpetuities joke, but if some of you wish to support Professor Beckerman Rougeau's musical career, you can find him on SoundCloud under Little Restrictive Covenant. And during our time, we were taught to question our assumptions, like whether or not the coffee served in the cafeteria was really the brand that was on the label. We learned that some questions were better left unanswered, like how many times the elevator you were riding in Sargent Hall had stalled that day. Professor Bishop, aside from teaching us the finer points of contract law, taught us it's better not to know what exactly is in a hot dog or a bologna sandwich. For most of our law school experience, the question of what our name would mean was primarily an exercise in developing technical competence. But the tail end of our law school experience included non-technical components, primarily the responsibility of professional ethics. The expansion of what our name would mean grew once again for those of us who are barred and expect to be barred. We swore fidelities to the Massachusetts and United States Constitution. The journey of what our name must mean doesn't end at technical competence or when the legal requirements are met, but it continues. It remains an open question of how your name will be remembered. Now, the study of law in its most abstract is the study of relationships. Various legal doctrines compete over the proper principle guiding the dispute between those relationships, between justice and efficiency. In our continuing pursuit of understanding what our name will mean, it is important to take stock of when calamities change certain relationships, that the law must meet the need of those changes. We must acknowledge not just our collective responsibility as global citizens or Americans, but our responsibility as lawyers, that we did not inherit a profession of rote application, but reasoned application. That as we continue to attempt to answer the question of what our name will mean, we must also attempt to answer the question of what the law must do. It is now known where the class of 2020 is. It remains an open question the role that each of you will play in the changes that are required in the law, whether we will be witnesses, reformers, or perfecters to the changes that are needed. I encourage this class to carry the mission of Suffolk Law of honesty and diligence into all of your work. The work of what your name will mean remains a work in progress, but it certainly wouldn't hurt to have those 2 adjectives on your side. Congratulations to the class of 2020, and thank you.